Next, let's move on to the Sunday game, starting with Seattle and Chicago. These have been, of course, two of the most maligned teams in the NFL this year. Seattle because they've just looked so futile on the field so many times, and Chicago because they've been seen by some as one of the most overrated teams in the league, a team that's gotten a ton of breaks and doesn't deserve to have anywhere near an 11-5 record. But here they are, both in the divisional round of the playoffs, and Chicago is a 10-point favorite. And so, there's so many negatives in this game. Chicago is a 10-point favorite, but they only had one home game this year where they won by double digits, including one home game where they lost to Seattle outright. But on the other side, Seattle, of course, has had clunker after clunker this year, lots of bad losses, and in fact, all 9 of their losses this year were by double digits. So now they're going on the road, playing a rest-at-home team. I'm not sure if any bet on this game is justifiable, but maybe you guys do. Scott Kellen, what do you think of this line?
The line's obviously pretty high here. I make the number 9.5, so I think the line's basically fair. Chicago, for me, would qualify in a fundamental playoff rushing situation. That's 29-3-1 if they're favored by 9 or less. And we're currently at 9.5, I think, or actually we're at 10. And they would also qualify in that same 48-20-0 situation that Atlanta qualified in if they're favored by less than 10. So we're right on the border there. I don't know if I have any interest in playing the Bears' side. But I think the over has a chance here. I haven't looked at the weather, so this is all based on, as long as we've got favorable weather conditions here. But Seattle can score points, I think. And as I said last week, the reason I like Seattle to compete with New Orleans, they've only had a couple games where their big 3 guys in offense have been healthy this year. And by that, Hasselbeck, Mike Williams, and the left tackle, Russell Okung. And in those games, they went to Chicago and won 23-20, so they scored 23 points. And they lost 34-19 at New Orleans. So they scored 23 and 19 points. I think they can put up 20 points on the Bears in this game with that offense. But the problem is they give up points as well. And in every road game this year, they've given up at least 18 points or more. And I predict my numbers make this game about 46 or 47 points. I think Seattle can get to 20 points in this game. The Bears played 4 games at home against playoff teams this year. They gave up 17 to Green Bay, gave up 23 to Seattle, and then gave up 26 and 36 near the end of the year against playoff teams as well. So, and 34 against the Jets. It actually played 5 games against playoff teams. So I think Seattle can get their share of points. I think Chicago's going to win the game, which means I think they're going to score more. The total is low here at 40. I think the over has a chance as long as the weather conditions are favorable.
All right, cool. Zach, what do you make of this line? What does your simulation say? Exactly 10?
The line's fair. The line's fair, right at 10. I'm going to take a look at this game from a different angle. And, our numbers were pretty poor this year on Seattle and Chicago. Just nothing that you can rely on for projecting this game. But if you go back and think about that New Orleans-Seattle game, Seattle did not run an unsuccessful play against the New Orleans defense the entire game. The only plays that were unsuccessful is because they had drops. Mike Williams dropping the ball, the other wide receiver dropping the ball. But it seemed like I can't remember a time that a coaching staff had a team so well prepared for their offense against an opposing team's defense as Pete Carroll's Seattle Seahawks were last week against the New Orleans Saints. I mean, the players were wide open and doing whatever they want. So I have to wonder if Carroll and his staff is really, going to be able to repeat the effort and be able to pick apart Chicago's defense this week in film study as they were last week in New Orleans. Right. And if they are, I would urge you to play or take a look at the 4-1 odds you might be getting on Seattle straight up. I mean, laying 10 with Chicago and Jay Cutler always makes me nervous because anything could happen with that guy. You don't know what you're going to get with Seattle. They could just as easily get blown out as they could win this game. And look, they were 7-19 throughout the season, but they're 1-0 in the postseason, and that's what matters here. Right. They have a win over this team at their home place. So even though our numbers has Seattle is only 21% to win this game, and it's actually even money for percentage versus what you're getting in Vegas, if I'm going to make a play here, I'm going to roll the dice and say maybe that Seattle can carry it over one more time. That coaching staff can be equally as well prepared again this week as they were last week. I might take 4-1 odds in a straight-up game.
Right. John Ryan, what do you have to say about this line?
Well, I agree with Zach. I think the line is quite fair, but I can tell you one thing. I think there's a lot of people joining the Seattle bandwagon now since that big win over the Super Bowl champions. However, I did a little research here, and unfortunately for Seattle fans, teams who have defeated the defending Super Bowl champs in the next playoff game, as long as that playoff game is not a Super Bowl game, are 0-11 straight up and 1-10 against the spread. So I think Seattle is in a real tough situation here. Again, Chicago has had the rest, and the offensive line has been really abused over the entire season by the Chicago media. They've given up 56 sacks to Cutler. But a lot of times this is because Cutler just simply holds on to the ball way too long, and as Zach alluded to, makes mistakes. He makes bad reads. He literally runs out of progressions and then forces something with his powerful arm. And I think if the coaching staff simply sits down with him and communicates to him that, look, you're playing the Seattle Seahawks, they're a tough team, but you don't have to do this in this game, and methodically take what Seattle gives them, because Seattle will play that soft cover too. Chicago could win this game fairly easily. And by the way, I do have a big play on the total for anybody that's listening that wants to get it.